The first thing pros do that you don't is that the pros are properly baiting their teammates. That's right, the pros are baiting. Usually when you're playing competitive and you start hearing someone say that someone's baiting, it's usually a bad thing, and in that scenario, it is. You're probably being scared to push the site, sitting back holding nothing effective while your teammates are the ones actually trying to take space. This is improper baiting. I'm sure you can tell. It's bad, it's useless, and all it does is inflate your stats. You usually won't catch pros doing this. Instead, they use a more refined style of bait. Basically, you're fishing for bass while the pros are shark fishing. That's how different the styles of baiting are. The pros will still bait, but they do it in a way that helps everyone. While one of their teammates is either pushing or playing an angle, they will stay in a spot covered from that swing, but they will still be holding an important angle or position while still being close enough to adjust themselves to refrag their teammate in case they lose a gunfight and need the refrag, or if they just need the extra manpower. It's pretty clear why this is better, because instead of doing nothing, you're holding an area for your team and more so playing for your teammate's refrag and are ready to accomplish that. And if this goes perfectly, you may kill someone on your angle and refrag your teammate, getting you 2 kills instead of your teammate getting bodied and everyone yelling at you. That is the level these players are thinking on. And even then, that was just one out of the 10 different things that pros do that you don't. The second of which being, you're not taking space properly as a duelist. Tell me how many times this has happened to you. You go Reyna and you're attacking, you walk up to a choke, barely clearing angles, you throw a flash while staying in the same spot, and you just continuously jiggle peek the choke point, hoping someone might slip up. Hopefully you can tell something is wrong with the example I just gave you. In fact, just to show you what you're doing is wrong, I've gone into game to give you an example. So what you're doing before, you were walking up to the choke, barely clearing anything. And when you get here, you just hold this, you do nothing. You just wait until someone peeks you and maybe you get a kill, or maybe you get swung and die. Maybe you'll start dry peeking this. So overall, things that aren't too useful when it comes to actually taking space on the site. Now over here on B, I'll show you what you should be doing. While you can slow walk up if that's what you need to do, we're gonna get a little bit more aggressive with it. You need to use your utility to clear space. So maybe as you push up here, throw a leer out. This should be able to cover just about everything, and you need to move up with this. You need to take space with your abilities, and hopefully your teammates will play off this too. This is because as you're slowly peeking this, doing a little bit of nothing, you're probably going to die, and you're not doing too well at actually getting your team to space. But if you throw this flash up, people are forced to either shoot it or look away, meaning you can probably get up close. This will apply for even like someone on jet, because instead of just running out doing nothing, you could do a couple things. Option 1, dash, smoke here, smoke there, dash into this smoke. You close the door, you got your team positioning, and you hold what you need to hold. You need to be taking space as a duelist. You can't just be slow walking expecting a kill to happen. You need to make that kill happen. It is your entire job as a duelist. But that isn't everything, because this also applies to the defender side of things. People often forget how important it is to actually hold and take space as a defender, which is something that pros do amazingly. If you can get an early pick or take aggression onto a choke that defenders might rotate into, you're almost guaranteeing your team a pick. And even if you don't, you get intel on where the enemies can and cannot be. To take these positions, it is the same as attack, where you need to peek off your utility and use the info that it gets you. This will help you shape your defenses around the space you create. So make sure that regardless of attack or defense, you're properly pushing up and taking space as a duelist. You have a lot of util to do this, so you might as well use it. But how do you know when to be aggressive and when to back up? Well, thankfully, our next tip will go over that exactly. The third tip being that pros know when to use aggression. Typically, when you're down in man count, you want to be aggressive, and when you're up in man count, you want to be passive. This is usually true for solo queue, and chances are you are solo queuing, but let's get in detail, because you probably have some questions. What if you're even in a man count? So let's get more in depth. Starting with defense, if your team is upping kills, you should definitely be backing down and playing more passive. You know that the attackers are going to have to push you to be able to plant the bomb, so there's no need to get yourself picked off in a gunfight that you didn't need to be in the first place. Your best bet here is just to try and waste time for the enemy team. But if you're down men on defense, you need to play aggressively, because if you don't, the enemies will always explode out onto site. You're not holding space, you're not taking space, so they have all of it as free real estate. This is going to make winning the round even harder because they're pushing you off the site. But putting that pressure while you are down will slow down the enemies, because chances are maybe you'll get some damage off, maybe you'll get close to getting a kill, or maybe you'll get that kill. On top of that, you'll be aggressively using your util, which will be forcing the enemies to slow down and use more of their utility. This will buy you a little time, and hopefully they won't be able to crunch on you. So if you're on defense and you're down in man count, make sure to play aggressive to even out the team count. If it's a 4v5, see if you can get it down to a 4v4. If you do, great job. But here's where you need to be a little bit more passive. An even man count is usually like a stalemate. both teams are just going to be trading out utility, and chances are the attacking team might just start to bait in this scenario. So that's why you want to become more passive and avoid pushing into somebody sitting in a corner. So you should really just be holding more passive angles on site, maybe some off angles. Just avoid swinging for the most part. Do whatever you want, just lay up on the aggression a little bit when there's an even man count. But things get a little bit different when you're on attack. What pro players usually do is for the first 30 seconds of a round, usually they're aggressively taking space. This is when they're peaking the most, trying to move up and hold important parts of the map. They'll most likely be using a lot of their utility here. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's quiet, but they'll probably try to claim at least one body within these 30 seconds. And once you get further towards a minute, they're going to start slowing things down. They'll wait for their info gadgets to come back up, and they'll try to figure out if they're attacking the right place. They'll start communicating, trying to figure out their best positions for the late round execute. At this point, maybe you're up in man count after taking those gunfights, meaning you won't need to play as aggressive, so you can slowly clear out angles and maybe even find an opening into sight. But once this is done, it's finally time to be aggressive. Move out from that lurk, clear the hard angles, and really just use your utility and bounce out onto sight. Once you get the spike down, attack starts to follow the defense's rules. Whenever bomb is planted, you should really be thinking yourself as a defender, because now you need to protect the bomb the same way the defense try to protect the site. The defenders need to come to you, okay? Remember that. Man count wise, again, it's the same as before. If you're up in man count on attack, you want to start slowing down, maybe waiting to get information from your team's utility, taking key positions on chokes. You don't want to peek, get slammed, and let the enemies even out what's going on. If you're down on man count, you're going to want to start playing up in the aggression. Chances are the enemies will be out of position and you'll be able to get a pick to even things out. If you isolate these ones, I guarantee you will even out your man count. That's basically all the scenarios I can come up with, and hopefully that gives you some clarity on what I meant by this golden rule. Then another thing pros do really well that you don't is using utility before swinging a corner. This somewhat plays into what I said about taking space, but we're going to focus more into the utility. You need to be using your utility. If you die without using it, you had zero impact on the round most likely, and pros know this, which is why they try to get the most use out of their life possible. Let's say you're fighting mid on ascent, there is no reason for you to be dry peeking any angle here. There is an extremely high chance you are being held. Well, what any high elo or pro player will tell you to do is to pop some utility. This is spread out in a few ways. Either you use something that gives you info like a drone, dart, eye, something like that. And these are good because they'll let you know if people are there. If it spots nobody, you know you're clear on the angle for at least a second. And then with the flashes, it is kind of the same except a little bit riskier, but with a higher reward. You should almost always flash yourself out of corners and need to learn the timings to do so. You need to be out as the flash pops, because then if someone was out there, they're either not looking at you or they're full blind. And if they aren't, well, then that sounds like you claimed some space for free and you didn't die. Good job. So let's say you're not swinging though and playing a slightly more passive play style. Well, you're going to want to use the next tip, which is holding farther angles. A mistake you're probably making that I can guarantee the pros aren't is holding angles way too close. Gunfights in professional play on average actually occur from further away than they do in most competitive matches, especially in lower elo. They're holding further out angles, and they do this for a few reasons. I'll go into game as I explain this to you. First off, it plays into perspective. If you're closer to an angle, chances are the enemies will see you before you can actually see them. This cam will represent our enemy. It is head height, and it is holding this angle as maybe an enemy would. Maybe they're swinging, something like that. Now I am straight lined up as close as I can to this wall. If I go on this cam, as you can see, they can see a good amount of my body. They can see my head, they can see my shoulder, they can see just about everything on the right side of me. If I look at the cam, I can honestly see less of the cam than the cam can see of me. But okay, now let me back up straight as possible. Something like here, which is not too horrible. As you can see, I'm a much smaller target now, much less of my head is visible, while I can see just as much as the cam. This will help you when you're swinging, because your body will show later on their screen than theirs will show on your screen, especially if they are closer to the angle. You will also appear to be swinging out faster than you will if you are closer, because as I said, if you're closer, more of your body showing before you even get out. They'll probably see you by the time you're here. As you can see, I can't even see the camera yet. The camera can see a good amount of me, but if I back up a little bit, I can see the camera, so obviously it's just better to hold angles or swing from further away most of the time. Cam can see me, I can't see the cam, I back up, I can see the cam. Pretty simple. Along with holding farther angles, the next thing the pros are always doing is they're holding their crosshairs at head height at all times. This is just simple crosshair placement. But even in Diamond and Ascendant lobbies, and sadly some of my Immortal lobbies, I see people staring at stomachs, legs, and toes. You should be going for the head only. And this is for one big reason, which I'm sure is pretty obvious. I'm going to give you a scenario. If you're in a gunfight with an enemy and you both have the same gun, you both hit the same amount of shots, but you're aiming at their torso while they're aiming at your head, no matter the gun, you're going to lose that gunfight literally every single time. The pros know that, IELO knows that, and I know that, but I want you to know that so that you stop losing gunfights that you do not need to be losing, because at the end of the day, I just want to see you guys succeed. And the next thing I will say to help you guys with that is the 7th thing pros do that you don't, which is properly using their utility. I've touched on utility a lot in this video. It's played into many different factors, so I'll keep it short and sweet. But the reason it's coming up so much in different ways is because utility really is probably the most important thing in this game. It entirely separates the good players from the bad. You could have really bad aim, but if utility usage is good enough, you'll probably end up in Radiant eventually. A lot of people will use their utility with no purpose. They might throw a flash, but they won't do anything with it. They won't claim any space, they won't take any fights. They'll throw something that scans the area, but won't use it to either move in, move out, or make any decisions. Maybe you're over smoking chokes, leaving you smokeless when a push occurs. On the contrary, the pros are always making a move off of their utility. If they flash something, they try to claim their space off of it, or at least claim a body. They also combine their utility with their teammates, so maybe a scan rolls out first, then you flash off of the intel that gave you. It really just comes down to thinking, will this help me, or how can I make this help me? It's all about shaping the scenario. There is a reason that even the worst of the agents in the game still have people that play them in Radiant lobbies and sometimes even pro matches, because when using util properly, most things will probably work out. The next thing pros are doing that you aren't doing is only having 2 to 3 main agents. Hopefully by now you know that one tricking isn't really a good thing in Valorant, but what you may not have known that most pros do know is that it's more effective to have a bag of 2 to 4 characters spread across a few roles that you have mastered than it is to be okay at everyone in the game, because chances are there will always be an opportunity to play one of your core 3 or 4. Maybe you have a fill in every single role, or maybe you have a fill in 3 out of the 4 roles. You just need to choose who you like the best out of everything. Me personally, on Duelist, I offer someone like Raze or Jet. They're 2 very different play styles, so I get to cover a lot of things depending on the map I'm playing. But if Duelist is taken, in my bag I also have Cypher. I can play Cypher on most maps, I think he's fun, and usually people don't want to go Sentinel. Then my last filling option is Brim. The smokes is also a very common thing to need to fill. And while I know the concepts of other characters and can probably play them okay, chances are in a game, someone is gonna go the role you aren't amazing at. I'll take the gamble that there's probably an initiator player in my game, so I'll use my skills to play someone like a smoke or a sentinel if I'm not able to play my main. I'd rather play someone I'm confident in than someone who I have to overthink what I'm doing because I'm not entirely sure. An example of this might be someone like Tent. Started off as a duelist for Sen, but has recently moved over to Omen. The man isn't out here filling every agent, but he has a few that he's very good at and confident in who can make an impact on when necessary. And now we're about to be on the last 2 tips, but I'd quickly like to say that if you've enjoyed this video so far, feel free to subscribe, and if you want to watch me live, my Twitch is in the description along with my Twitter. Back on topic though, the 8th thing that pros do that you don't is they know when to use what gun. Now this has 2 meanings. 1, they know what gun to buy for what scenario. If they plan on only playing close angles, they might opt for a Stinger over a Spectre on an eco, or maybe they're gonna be playing more passively and need the extra bullets, so they'll opt for a Phantom on their buy round. The gun is quieter, it has no bullet tracers, so if you shoot through a smoke it's safe, and it's also harder to pinpoint exactly where they are based off the sound cue. But if they plan on being more aggressive, they probably go for the Vandal because it's better on long range gunfights, it does more damage to the body, and it's usually a more efficient killing weapon. But they also know how to use their whole kit. That is the second part of this section. Because let's say they're on a save and their light buy was a Ghost and a Spectre. That's not too uncommon for an eco. Light armor included, that would be about 2,500 credits. So if they encounter someone on a buy from a long range and decide that they need to take this fight for whatever reason, maybe it's a free kill to them, maybe the other person's shooting at them and they need to fight back because they can't get into cover, while a more inexperienced player would probably use their Spectre since it's their primary, it's automatic, and it's more expensive, so it has to be better, right? Well, a good player would probably use their Ghost in the scenario if it's far enough. The reason why being the shots on the Ghost are actually more precise. It would only be a 2 to 3 tap headshot for the kill. Unlike the Spectre, which would require, on best case scenario, at least 3 and be a lot harder to land as effectively as a Ghost would. And last but not least, the final things pros do is they change their aggression and playstyle based on what map they're playing. Many maps are attack or defense sided, whether people like to admit it or not. Most attack sided maps like Lotus, Haven, or even Breeze are better for aggressive attack pushes and sneaky defensive plays, while on defense-sided maps like Ascent and Split, pros might go for a more methodical push where they take more time to clear out areas, while the defenders might decide to take space more aggressively. They really just show their knowledge for the game at the end of the day. And if you want to grow your knowledge for the game, then you could subscribe and watch more of my videos. Maybe one of the two that are going to pop up right here. Before you go, make sure you stay hydrated and wear your seatbelts.